All right. So I just wanted to make a quick video to talk about some of the ideas that come up in that discussion of the female body. And I did want to find some other kind of videos for us, but not everything is out there the way that I would present it or the way that I've talked about it before. So um, one way to do this is watch the video on feminism. It's 2 minutes long, and it's definitely a really good resource that I think explains fourth wave feminism very well. There is something to acknowledge that feminism has gone through four waves now. And Margaret Atwood would have been writing during the third wave of feminism. By the way, the third wave of feminism is where a lot of people get the misinformation about what feminism really is. And that's because of, I would say, some radical ideas that came out of that time. The idea that feminists hate men, that is aimed at a very small subsection of third wave feminists who did really hate men, and kind of preached the downfall of man and the uprise of women. And that very small subset of the culture got the most kind of attention, and especially the most negative attention. And so if you're hearing people say like, well, feminists hate men, that's a myth that comes out of a very true statement about a very small group of people. Um, Another kind of wild thing from that small group of people was something like we should stop saying history and we should start saying it herstory, or that we should stop spelling women men at the end and we should spell women with a y, to eradicate the women are a part of men. And what's notable about that isn't the kind of obnoxiousness of it, which I think society has kind of decided like that's kind of obnoxious. But the things that came out of it are little things like, it used to be grammatically correct to refer to any unknown gender in a sentence always as he. That was a rule of grammar for a long time. And that rule has ceased to really exist, and no one's really keeping up with it anymore, because of that same conversation. And that conversation proved to be a little more fruitful. And now we see language moving even further to using gender neutral terms, like they, because we're a little more sensitive of the fact that there are a lot of people who are out there and they're transgender or they're gender neutral, and they shouldn't be gendered in a sentence just because there's some ambiguity. So you can see where some of those ideas are kind of coming from, and some of the really rich things that come out of those a little more wild ideas. Um, One thing that I did want to mention, that I couldn't quite find a really good example of online, is just talking about the equality pie. So if you watch that episode on feminism, she one of the women does a really good job talking about the equity stool, which is a really good metaphor. And the equality pie is actually a misnomer. It's intentionally a misnomer. And the idea is that there's a subsection of the culture, namely cis white male heterosexual men, and the threat of, well, if other people get the same rights that I have, then I won't have the same share of pie anymore. That my pie will be diminished, and that's a fallacy. So the metaphor of the equality pie is that equality is not a pie. If you take women who traditionally make considerably less than men, I think 88% of a male salary is pretty typical right now, and you suddenly paid women that other 12%, um, it's not affecting me. It's not changing my lifestyle at all. There's a perception that it is, but it's in reality it has nothing to do with me. If you take kids who couldn't go to white schools and you say now they can go to white schools, right? The reaction at the time was, as a white person, that's going to diminish my education. In reality, uh, quite the opposite. We know from numerous studies that diversity actually increases everybody's education, makes people more empathetic, and it makes us more collaborative. And sharing culture and tradition is a fantastic way to learn a variety of new things. So, on the surface, people who kind of buck against that first wave of something, we usually find out, like after a little while, no, there really wasn't a pie. There wasn't really a division in our equality, except for some people were not being treated equal. And so, just a couple of those concepts I think are important, especially as we hopefully discuss some of these essays, because we're hitting some pretty interesting, pretty heavy hitting stuff here. And this is not the first time that we're going to talk about some of these issues.